Welcome, lovely listeners, to Soul Stirred, stories of growth and the human experience. I'm Emily Garcia.
And I'm Kasey Clark.
We will be your guides on this journey. We are so glad you are here.
Each week, we'll come together, sometimes with other incredible thinkers, creators, and adventurers, to generously share stories of self-discovery, recovery, triumph, and what it means to live a life on purpose.
No matter where you are in your own journey, connection is here for you at Soul Stirred.
Settle in, take a deep breath in, and let's inspire each other.
Welcome to Soul Stirred. Welcome back to Soul Stirred. We have given an invitation to our listeners to write to us and ask questions. And we have gotten some really good ones. We chose one today that Kasey and I felt like was relevant. We can give personal examples, we can give professional examples, but today we are going to talk about people who shut us down, who don't listen to us, who feel like they are always right and you are wrong unless you agree with them. So, are you ready for the question, Kasey?
I'm ready. Let's take this on. We're talking about conflict. I'm excited that we're hearing from our listeners and finally getting this chance to do some interaction with them. So,
me too.
Let's see what we've got.
Okay. Here's the question. My partner is wonderful, except when we get into arguments. He is relatively intelligent, good at debating. He used to be a really good and top member of his debate team. And therefore, in every argument, he believes he is always right and that he has, quote unquote, won the argument because he's better at articulating his position. When we are communicating about our relationship, it feels like I'm on the debate team in high school. He uses all of the learned tactics on me, his favorite being rambling. When it's his turn to talk, he will go on and on and on and on and change the subject a million times without letting me respond to a single thing. And when I try to respond before it starts, it gets confusing, and he will claim that I'm interrupting and therefore I'm the person in the wrong. I don't want to interrupt him, but he will talk for so long that I'm no longer even able to productively listen, as there's just too much information to keep up with. I'm not even allowed to ask clarifying questions during his ramble, and it leads to complete confusion. I have told him how his style of speaking affects me and how it's not productive because I get so lost and overstimulated that I have no idea what we're even talking about by the end of his speech. It honestly feels intentional and manipulative, like he's trying to perplex me on purpose, but he maintains that he's not.
Mm-hmm.
How do I have a conversation with this person? It's literally so hard. I feel like an idiot every time I try, even though I'm in the right at least some of the time. I really want to know how I can either get to his level of debating or bring him down to my level so we can actually have a conversation where we both feel heard. How do you communicate with someone who rambles on when they argue and doesn't leave room for you to respond, while also preserving the idea of not interrupting people?
For exhaustion.
Yeah.
It sounds exhausting to be in dialogue with this person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is really hard.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you can hear even in the question, the impact that's being had. In her question, she's asking, how do I get to be the one who gets to be in the right?
Yeah.
How do I fight differently so that I get to feel like I'm right, at least some of the time? And so it brings me to this place of, I want to ask the partner that's being described, are you fighting so that you can be right? Or are you fighting so that you can be in relationship? What is the intention?
It is about the intention. And so many people want to be right. I mean, it feels good to be right. So
Of course it does.
Of course we want to be right. But if people can slow down enough to go, what is the impact on our relationship? Because every little thing we do moves us in a direction of connecting or disconnecting.
Right.
And I think that's where it's like, this feels so disconnecting. If you can't talk to your partner, then you're like, well, do you really know me? Do you care about me?
Yeah.
Do you want to hear what I have to think?
Yeah.
It feels relevant for me because I've had multiple people in my life who I've been close with where I've felt like they were right and they didn't want to hear
Mm-hmm.
what I've had to say, or I've witnessed it with other people in my life do it to other people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, one example, I was really close with someone and she did some things that felt hurtful. And I'm so conflict avoidant that I didn't want to say anything to her. And
Mm-hmm.
I had talked to a few other people about it and they said, she probably doesn't know and you should have a conversation with her. And then finally, it took me months. It was probably like 6 months. And I finally got up the nerve
Mm-hmm.
and I reached out to her and I said, hey, can we have a conversation? There are these things that you've done.
Mm-hmm.
And I know, I've thought about the reason you've done them, and I know that they're not coming from a malicious place.
Mm-hmm.
I know that you're really just trying to do something to connect with someone else who had also hurt me. But I want you to understand how it makes me feel. And her response was, no, that's not right. It's completely wrong. You have judged all of this wrong. And by the way, here are a list of things that you have done wrong. And it was like things where, hey, it was like, that's not even factual.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was things involving my children where she was like, you're a bad mom because you did, this, and this. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So what ended up happening is we have this conversation and I listen to everything she has to say.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm hang up with her and I'm proud of myself that I spoke up.
Mm-hmm.
But then I wake up the next day and I go, I don't want anything to do with her anymore
Mm-hmm.
because I came to her and felt like I really opened up and I really thought through what it felt like for her and what it was like for me. And she didn't hear any of it and then made me feel like I had done everything wrong.
Yeah.
And so then when I say every little thing we do brings us closer to connection or closer to disconnection,
Mm-hmm.
I felt like a door had been shut and I locked it then. I was like, okay, we're disconnected now.
Well, when I come to tell you about my hurt and you hurt me again, sort of like weaponizing my vulnerability against me,
Right.
I mean, is it not, again, we're talking about right, whatever that means for people, but is it not a right move to protect myself from that relationship going forward?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
To say I'm not going to come back for more? I think that's self-protective and a boundary that is important to put into place. So there's a lot to unpack here, right? Because it's like we want to set it in the context of how much does this relationship matter to me? How much of myself am I willing to give in order to make the relationship work? And then what is the responsibility of the other person to be able to meet me at the point of my vulnerability so that, as you say, we can come closer into connection with each other rather than move farther apart?
And I think that for the person who wrote into us and how I think about myself in these situations is that you can have a conversation with someone who has a very high processing speed and they are thinking through all the things right on the spot. And I tend to be the kind of person where a conversation ends and I go, oh, I wish I had thought to say this thing. And it'll go on for days where I think of it. And I'm guessing that the writer also is like, well, I'm not on the debate team. I'm not coming up with all of the counter arguments on the spot, but I wish I could.
Yeah. Yes, and would it serve the relationship if you could? I think not.
Yeah. And that's just it.
What she's wanting is to be able to stay in the dialogue, the debatey dialogue with her partner, when what is actually trying to happen behind that is connection. And so in my opinion, it's like what something wants to be done differently in this interaction, and it's not for you to become more like him. It's maybe for him to become more like you in order for the connection to occur. I think. I mean, we don't know these people or what the content is of the circumstance. And yet I would be questioning if this question came to me like on my therapy couch, how is the way he's behaving protecting him? And what is it protecting him from? Vulnerability, perhaps? You know, if you stopped using your debate skills from high school And if you stopped knowing everything, and if you stopped allowing all of these thinking threads to unload all over her, what would be left there?
Mm-hmm.
What might you find in your willingness to take a pause?
Yeah.
What gold might be there if you were to allow some silence and for her to be able to express what's happening for her?
Have you heard of the Dunning-Kruger effect?
No, tell me.
The Dunning-Kruger effect is the people who we encounter who think they know everything.
Mm-hmm.
That when you have a conversation with them, it could be about, let's say you're talking to someone and you are a financial planner and this other person is not, not a financial planner, and they will say, no, you have it all wrong.
Mm-hmm.
This is how it works with financial planning, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so it's when you don't know much
Mm-hmm.
about something, you tend to overinflate your abilities and your knowledge. But then the more you learn, the more you realize how much you don't know.
Yeah.
And so when you're having a conversation, which feels like a debate
Mm-hmm.
with someone, there may be the Dunning-Kruger effect at play because they think they know.
Yeah. Well, and again, I think it comes back to intention. It's like asking oneself, why am I talking? Because this person came to me and asked me about financial planning, presumably because there's something they want to learn about their own financial management and planning process. I doubt that they came to me to say, tell me everything you know about financial planning. Right? And so why am I talking? Am I talking so that I can inflate myself and show them everything that I know that they don't know? Or am I talking because I want to actually answer the question that is before me? Because if that's the case, then you don't keep talking if your listener isn't still listening.
Right.
Right? And the moment that you inflated and started like proselytizing to me in the Dunning-Kruger effect with everything that you know about financial planning, I likely stopped listening because I went to a place of like where you started. Oh, so I'm wrong. Like I'm in an underdog position for knowing less than you about this thing. And now my brain shut down the capacity to be able to A, hear you, and B, learn anything from this.
Right.
So it to me, it all goes back to intent. Like, why are we talking to each other? Why did I come ask you versus asking Google the answer to my question? Google could have given me the same facts that you're giving me, but I asked you. Perhaps because what I was wanting was connection with you and for you to be my teacher in this way. But in that way, then the teacher has a responsibility to make sure that the message is being delivered in a way that the listener is hearing it and getting it in the amount and the quantity and the quality that they need in order for them to increase their understanding of whatever the matter is. And, from there, this is a really important thing in relationships because we do need to be able to dialogue with each other, and sometimes with some heat, like in a conflictual way where there's some fire around it because maybe we don't agree. But there is a way to stay in that kind of interaction with another person that you love or care about where both people still get to show up and be seen and get heard. And it requires us really to slow down and pause and consider, what is it that I'm responding to right now? And or what is it I'm reacting to right now? And understanding the difference between a reaction and a response. How present am I? And what is the conversation that I'm actually in? And am I protecting myself from some invitation for vulnerability or connection? That perhaps if I could release that, I could be more with the person who's across from me.
Yeah. I love that. And I wonder how people can learn to slow down enough and listen.
Yeah.
Like, how do they ask themselves those questions?
And do they?
Yeah. And do they?
I see not. Often not. I think like the couples that I work with are, they don't even realize they don't have the level of consciousness yet to see that something got triggered in the interaction. and to see when they're coming from a place of I'm trying to be a knower more than I'm trying to be a connector in this
Yeah.
moment. And so I think it starts with like building the muscles around self-awareness. You know, one might ask oneself, who am I in this relationship? And how am I being in this relationship? And am I showing up in a way that is bringing us closer to each other? Or am I showing up in a way that's moving us away from each other?
Yeah,
And is that what I want?
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
There is, the metaphor for relationships are like a garden,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to nurture and maintain a garden.
Yeah.
You have to water it and give it really good soil and nutrients. And when weeds come up, you have to pull the weeds and you have to make sure it just has just the right amount of sun.
Mm-hmm.
And all of that is true in our interactions with the people who we are in relationship with.
Yeah.
If I am interacting with you, am I nurturing this garden,
Mm-hmm.
or am I overwatering it? Maybe that's talking too much. I'm overwatering it.
Yeah.
Am I underwatering it by not talking enough? Am I not, showing up and having a conversation?
Yeah.
Am I letting the weeds grow because I'm avoiding it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And knowing that you are the gardener
Yeah.
of the relationship gardens of your life,
Yes.
that you are the one that's either allowing the weeds to grow or bringing the sunshine and the water to the thing. And then I think holding the responsibility that we all have for that. There's a thing that I like to call like relationship citizenry. Am I being a good relationship citizen right now? Am I, that's where I think the conversation on the inside for folks to think about is, what am I reacting to? Is there some part of me that feels like it needs to be safe or protected right now? Because what we know for sure is that we cannot be both protected and connected at the same time. I've said this on the show before, but here we are face to face with what that really means.
Yeah.
So I'd be curious for this questioner, like, what is the content of these dialogues? Something sounds like it's having her partner get triggered. Perhaps she's coming with some kind of invitation that's like, I really want you to be more vulnerable with me. Vulnerability creates an opening for connection to get in to the space. And so I wonder what she's wanting when she approaches him. And then I wonder what that's triggering in him that has him dropping in all of this knowing and competition dialogue skills that are pushing her away. And
Yeah.
so what's the intent? What is actually desired here? Those are some of the questions I might start with. And if connection is what is trying to happen, the good news is there are skills that can be learned in order for that connection to occur. And he's got to stop doing what he's doing.
Yes.
I want to invite him to take a pause and take a deep breath and stop proselytizing to your partner. Ask yourself this question: do I want to be right more than I want to be in this relationship?
Yeah. Yeah. And you can learn a new skill. It is like a muscle.
Mm-hmm.
You just have to keep showing up over and over and working that muscle in order to change from being the top debater from high school
Yeah.
to the top communicator in your relationship.
Right.
And communication is about listening and being heard.
Exactly. Exactly. Relationship conversations are about a dialogue, not a monologue.
Mm-hmm.
They want to have a movement that goes back and forth, like playing a game with each other where you're passing a ball between you back and forth, back and forth. The game is no longer fun if you throw the ball and it can't ever be tossed back.
Yeah.
The game stops. There's no connection. There's no interaction there. And
You
so
just had the visual, like the person just is like tossing the ball up all
exactly.
by themselves and they want you to watch.
Exactly. That's kind of what
Yeah.
the partner is doing in this communication pattern, is like he'd rather toss the ball up against the wall by himself than play it back and forth with you. And so, I think there's an opportunity here to design before we communicate about any topic again, to have a conversation about how we communicate
Yes.
when the next topic is going to come up. And for her to do some request making, like the next time we have a conversation about something that's important, I really need for you to hear me.
The thing that's important about that is asking it at a time when you're not in the middle of one of these debates,
Yes.
at a time when you're not having any kind of conflict, and you can say, hey, there's something that has been on my mind and it's weighing on me, and I want to ask you to do something different. Because if you strike when the iron's cold, it's more likely the person is going to be able to receive it. But when we are in the middle of something that we're feeling heightened emotions, people get defensive and they're like, no, it's fine.
Yeah. No, when it's hot is not the time. When
Yeah.
things are cool in the air is a time to say, can we have a conversation that designs around how we communicate with each other? Unless his intention really is to crush her with his righteousness and his knowing and his verbal acuity and skillfulness, then we're talking about a different thing. And if that's really the intent, then I go over to ask her, is this really a relationship you want to be in?
Yeah.
And that's kind of what it comes down to. It's like, are you willing to do the work that it's going to take for us to have connection here with each other, which means knowing and being willing to look at what is your part in the fact that it's currently breaking down and not working for both of us, and that we both have a part in that.
Thinking about the long run of asking, and do you want to be in it? Because if you are early on in a relationship and you don't have a lot of roots together, and this is a pattern and a person is unwilling to do anything different, it will only get harder.
Yeah.
As you have shared finances, if you have children, as you have parents who are aging, as you have health issues, as life happens and throws you curveballs, the things that are difficult early in a relationship, and I don't know if these people are early or not, but if they're early in a relationship, it will only get harder unless they're both committed to making sure they're communicating in a way that really allows them to both be heard.
Yeah. Yeah. It's of paramount importance. I would also say there's one other thing that wants to be heard, especially in the space of, I think this sounds like it's an intimate partnership, a romantic relationship. The relationship also wants to be a thing that we listen to. Not just the people in it, but the relationship itself usually has a voice and some wisdom and some intelligence about what's trying to happen here. And what I mean by that is, if every time you try to connect, conflict happens, what is that conflict trying to signal? What does it want you to know? In this case, it sounds like what she's hearing is that she often ends up on what I would call the downside, or feeling like she's being made to be bad, wrong, small in some way. And so my question, and I send this on the wings of huge love, is how much more of that are you willing to tolerate before this wants to change? Either the dynamic inside the relationship wants to change, or maybe the relationship wants to change.
Yeah.
But you listener, the person who wrote us this question, I want her to hear us say, you deserve to be heard and seen and understood and listened to. And if you are in this partnership with a person who's unwilling to make the space for that to occur, you may have a different set of questions to ask yourself. I want to discourage the urge that says, I need to learn how to fight better so that I can win.
Yeah.
And I too know how that feels. I am in relationship with some people who know how to fight to win. And I have felt that feeling of like, well, maybe if I can just go do more research or learn more knowledge or get smarter in some way, I could stay toe to toe and argue with them all the way to the win. Right?
Right.
And then one day I discovered No, winning is not what I want. Winning is not my intent. And in fact, if this is a competitive game we're playing, I don't want to play.
Yeah.
You can either
Yeah.
make the space for me to show up and get heard and be seen, or I'm going to take myself out of the race and
Mm.
just conclude that maybe you're not my people and you weren't that interested in me.
Which can also be such a healthy thing to say, this is hurtful.
Yeah.
And we're not in a race where we're collaborating.
Yeah.
We're in a race where you are going to stomp on me to
Yeah.
win.
Yeah. I mean, I think, tell me what you think about this, but it's like if any relationship dynamic has you feeling like you need to compete further just to be seen, heard, and understood, probably those aren't your people. And that can be a hard pill
Oof.
to swallow because sometimes those people are your people.
Yeah.
Sometimes
Yeah.
they're your family. Sometimes they're your blood.
Sometimes they're friends of many years.
Exactly.
Sometimes they're a partner you've spent years with.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
But if they're not willing to take the deep breath and pause to make space for you to be heard, seen, and understood, well, first of all, I guess I want to say, are you willing to make the space for yourself to get heard, seen, and understood?
Yeah.
And if yes to that, then there's some skills you can learn to invite your partner and your people to come to that space with you.
Mm-hmm.
And then if they're still not willing to go there, you may need to remove yourself from the relationship
Yeah.
because there's no question in my mind that you are worthy of being heard, seen, and understood. Don't let anybody else have you feeling or seeing that otherwise.
Mm.
In the,
That's good.
yeah. In the case of your example with the person you were referring to, that person sounds like they, shot shame at you,
Mm-hmm.
judging you as a bad person, as a bad mother.
Yeah.
That to me is the most toxic, cancerous, ugly way to
Mm-hmm.
respond to a person who's bringing you a hurt heart and vulnerability.
Yeah.
And so to me, that's a relationship that I think you're in the right when you say, I'm done, I'm closing and locking that door.
Yeah.
That to me is the distance between conflict avoidance and a boundary.
Mm. Yeah.
Not everyone who's in our life belongs in our life.
Yeah. Not everyone who's in our life belongs in our future. It is sometimes these people serve a purpose for a time, but they aren't meant to stay in our lives.
Yeah. Yeah. And the ingredients to look for is to check in with yourself about how you feel after an interaction with said people.
Oh, yes. And
Something
checking
just
in how
got
you feel after
into you.
interactions
Yeah.
with anyone.
Yeah.
Like, did that person, do I feel like at a minimum neutral, or just like I feel better
Yeah.
after interacting with them? But the people who make you feel bad, we have to either highly limit the time
Mhm.
or stay away from them altogether.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's like if I leave this interaction consistently feeling like I'm small, bad, wrong, broken in some way, that person is not having an effect on you that sounds like love.
Mm-hmm.
Something wants to change. And from there, you go over to how willing are you to make the request for the change, give it an opportunity to happen. And then if it still can't, is this the right relationship for me?
Sure.
What is it feeding in me? How is it serving me?
Yeah.
Is it helping me to feel better about myself and my capacity at creating a beautiful, light-filled, colorful life like the garden for
Mm-hmm.
myself? Or is it growing weeds where myself wants more space to breathe?
Yeah.
Yeah, these are hard questions.
They are hard.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope that we were able to at least help our listener and the person who wrote in to approach this relationship with their partner and feel like, okay, I have some questions I can ask myself and that I can ask them in order to decide what is in my future, decide how to proceed.
Yeah. I hope it helped.
Yeah.
And I hope, listeners, that you keep asking, because this was really fun for us to break down and dig in. And so keep asking questions and keep writing in, and let's keep the conversation open. And together, hopefully we can all learn a little something and come closer towards connection with each other.
For our listeners, if you have questions that you want to send in, you can email us at soulstirredpodcast@gmail.com. Or there is a form you can fill out, and we will make sure that's in the show notes. So either way will work. We will get your question.
Yeah, let's stay in the conversation. We're looking forward to it.
All right. Take care, everyone.
Stirred listeners, thank you so much for joining us today as we bring you stories of growth in the human experience. We appreciate you, and we have a request for you. If you will, take 30 seconds to do these 3 things for us. 1, follow or subscribe to Soul Stirred Podcast. This makes sure you never miss an episode and helps us to make sure you never miss an episode. Head over to your preferred platform, click the Soul Stirred Podcast show page, and click the plus sign or the follow button. Second, we'd love it if you could give us a 5-star rating while you're there. Finally, choose your favorite episode and share it with a friend.
We are so grateful to all of our listeners for your continued support helping Soul Stirred grow and ultimately inspire others through authentic connection. Don't hesitate to reach out with ideas, stories, or questions. We are always eager to hear from you. Our email and social links are found in every episode's show notes. Until next time, keep stirring your soul and embracing your journey.
Take good care of yourselves and of each other. Bye-bye.